All right, everybody. Stocks by the numbers, welcome back. And some big updates here for the S&P indexes across the board, the 4, 5, and 600. And first off, we'll look at one of everyone's favorites here, Palantir Technologies, ticker symbol PLTR on the New York Stock Exchange. Stock closed a touch above 30, up about 0.5% on the day. After hours, roughly an hour ago, we hear news that Palantir is now joining the S&P 500. So like they say, buy on the rumor and sell on the news supposedly, but I understand if a lot of people aren't hitting the sell button, but this is a prime example of buy on the rumor because a lot of people were speculating that because of their growth, because of their consistency lately, because of how the market cap exploded, sitting here at 68 billion. Again, this was before the pop after hours on this news. So everybody was speculating Palantir may be joining the S&P 500 and ask and you shall receive. And the stock is up right now roughly 7.5%, 2.25 points after hours, up to about 32.60. And we can see we made our big pull and we could potentially be flagging, so we might go even higher. I'm expecting maybe a little resistance at 33.50. In my opinion, that's a key level to watch here for Palantir after hours. I'll show you. If we go back to right here, when the stock first came out of the gate, we shot straight up before consolidating and taking the next pop higher into the 40s. And look where the stock stopped. If I can move, there you go, top left of the screen, 33.5, even. And then we started consolidating downward, and then we bounced off the moving average and popped into the 40s. So in my opinion, I mean, off the news, as long as markets don't continue to really chunk down, but honestly, even if they do, you might have newer big volume coming into PLTR now, and in my opinion, they're probably going to push it up to 35 to 40. Chances are, because right now I'm sure the word is spreading and a bunch of people are jumping in after hours. We had a big influx of volume immediately. Now it's slowly trickling down, of course, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who may be taking profits here at this level as well. But more importantly, we could pop out of this flag that I'm pointing out here. We could just consolidate, bounce off the moving average, and then pop to about 33.5. But more importantly, if futures are in big red Monday morning, then chances are you're probably going to have even more volume coming in. Anyone who maybe isn't aware of this news at the moment, and they possibly will put in orders pre-market to take a position in PLTR. So that's going to be an influx of even more volume, speculating, of course. But in my opinion, that's probably going to happen Monday morning pre-market, and that's what's probably going to help pump this stock even further up. But again, in my opinion, probably going to take it back to 40. The stock closed at 30, so if they bring it back to those previous all-time highs of 45, you'd be looking at about a 50% move from today's close just alone off of this news, if they do take it back to 45. So, I said in my opinion it may have gotten a little overextended, but like we always say, we have to give credit where credit's due, and the company just continues to impress, continues to come in above analyst expectations. They went net income positive. They've been rocking and rolling on the EPS side. The revenue has been steadily growing. And I know one of the main concerns with Palantir was analysts were worried about the commercial segment of their revenue coming in, not just the government contract revenue. And what they're showing is that they're consistently exceeding expectations quarter over quarter, year over year for the most part for the commercial segment revenue. So, like we always say, we may not completely agree with the situation, but when you're constantly getting these positive catalysts rocking and rolling, just like we used to talk about the massive climb that we saw in Nvidia, right? Because it was just constant positivity after constant positive catalyst, right? I know I bumbled that, but you understand what I'm saying. So now chances are you're going to have, fund managers who are going to announce they're going to take a position now because it's on the S&P. You're going to have a lot of analysts now coming out and saying, oh, they've been doing great and now they're on the S&P, so my price target is $42 a share, right? So now you're going to have a bunch of these new analysts now reevaluating the situation, and they're probably going to come in and put buys or strong buys or outperform ratings with price targets, again, in my opinion, probably the high 30s to the low mid 40s. So that's going to add to even more momentum for PLTR. So that's why I'm saying you could potentially see 40 here just off this news over the next couple of trading days with what follows. But we can see the stock kind of stopped right there at like 32.70, 32.80. What did we hit? 32.88. And then you can see we really flattened out and now we're tightening up. And the top Bollinger Band on the daily, about 32.80. So the stock stopped right there. But again, in my opinion, off the technicals and based off the news itself of what it is, the gravity of the news, in my opinion, it's probably just hanging out, consolidating, setting up the potential bull flag, and you're going to see the pop to 33.50, which of course would bring it above the top Bollinger Band. The RSI is probably going to go into the 80s and potentially 90s, probably by like Tuesday, Wednesday, in my opinion. And the MACD was slipping downward. Now this is going to be like a big curl back upward, which could potentially give us another bullish cross, which could give us even further momentum. So if the stock gets up to 35.36, the MACD cross could push it to 39.40. And we're off to the races. Looks like we had almost a double top there on the RSI, pulled back to 62 and 2/3 on the weekly, and now of course it's probably going to pop up over the next week or two to above the 70 benchmark. But on the longer term time frame, even when the initial good news did start to come in and the stock really started to move, you can see that as we broke above that 70, that's where the little pullbacks took place. So this is why I'm saying it may continue to run into next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then potentially start to cool afterwards, going into the second week after this news has come out. You understand? But again, that's just my opinion. We'll see what happens. But let's check the pivot points also real quick. Pivot points, top resistance 30.96. We're well above that now on the weekly. If we come over here on the daily, yep, what'd I say? 35 to 40 should be no problem. And you can see the next resistance level, 35.99 on the daily. And in my opinion, you're probably going to see that Monday, if not Tuesday. And then, again, if these analysts do come out and they start pumping up the price target, who took a position now, which fund is going to take a position now just because it's listed on the S&P 500, that's going to potentially pump it up to 40. And also, more importantly, the stock has been on a big run, and again, I'm not trying to rain on your parade, but I'm always honest. I'm always a realist. You could make the argument that the stock is tremendously overvalued. So you can have this potential run up, and then you might have a cooling in the last 1 or 2 months of this year, because again, it's an election year, and people are speculating that the markets are going to get volatile, and we can continue to see big sell-offs and maybe like a 10-15% correction from our current levels. So if that happens, you can see a run up here, maybe to like 36, and then you can see a pullback here into the 30s, but then because the stock got listed on the S&P 500, now you're going to have a big January effect, in my opinion. Again, the January effect is when mutual funds, fund managers, they look at their positions, any ones that are underperforming or just kind of sitting stagnant, that's where they may cut and they may take new positions. And now because the stock is listed on the S&P 500, you're going to have a lot of that new fund volume coming into PLTR, in my opinion, rolling into January and February. So this is why I feel like 40 may be pretty inevitable. But again, if now they decided that we're going to drop and sell down markets for the next 7-8 weeks going into elections, then unfortunately you may see a big pop into the 30s, the mid 30s, but it might be short-lived. But again, we have to take it day by day, and we have to obviously keep an eye on the market overall. And I just wanted to quickly look at Dell as well, because Dell is another name that got added to the S&P 500. And you can see that the chart looks pretty similar, right? We had the big shoot up, and now we have our little consolidation zone here, potentially flagging, and we might pop back up. Now, we looked at Dell, I want to say maybe like two quarters ago. And I remember doing the earnings update, and I thought they were going to slightly miss because we were looking at revenue dropping year over year, and they ended up beating the estimates, and they were obviously citing AI and the strong demand that they had. And I said at the time, I remember that, the stock, in my opinion, is probably going to run to 130. It happened to run to 130 almost immediately here. Let me pull back. Yeah, I think it was right here. I think it was the end of February we did this. They came in, they beat on the EPS, and the stock, you can see, because it continued and had even more growth and momentum come into it after the news was fully digested. And of course, other traders and investors hit the buy button pre-market. So the stock after hours, we were down here at, like mid 90s. And the stock after hours, I think, popped to around this level. It was like 107 or like 111 or something. And I said, in my opinion, based off the news, they're probably going to do 130. And we can see that the next day, boom, 131. Then we consolidate, we bounce, we consolidate, we bounce, and we happen to run up to almost 180. So if it ran up to 180, And again, it was on the news of these earnings as well. And even though they beat, the stock ended up dropping and then bounced and almost went back to basically where it was. And then you can see it continued in this kind of upward channel, and then we dropped and we broke. But of course, everything pretty much looked like that recently. But my main point is 130 seemed feasible back here 2 quarters ago. And they took it up to 180, and even though we may have had one or two negative catalysts, the company still technically is coming in above expectations and is growing pretty nicely here off of the strong AI demand. So my point of saying all that is, even if you go from the mean average of between 130 and 180, right, you're looking at about 155. And you can see that after hours, even off the news, the stock's sitting here at 108. So pre-market Monday, similar to what I mentioned with Palantir, how Palantir can potentially play out. Right now, Dell's at 108. If we pop up out of that potential bull flag, you might see 111, 114. And then Monday morning, you may potentially see a pump back up to I want to say maybe 130. It's probably going to immediately get back to 130, in my opinion, off of this news. And then you have a 50-point spread between this high of 130 and this high of 180, which would bring us to 155. So in my opinion, that's probably where the stock will be going, which, as you see, is roughly a 50% move, even from this after hours pump of roughly 6 points on DELL. So congratulations to all Palantir and Dell shareholders, because of course this is very, very good news. And I know people, again, with Palantir, whether we don't see eye to eye, I respect the fact that you guys did jump into a company like that, because of everything that I say that you should kind of be looking for, in my opinion, in a stock. Technically, Palantir is ticking a lot of those boxes. So whether we feel it's overvalued or not, again, we have this good news just consistently coming in. And I'm just very happy for all of you, because I'm sure a lot of you potentially 6, 12, 18 months ago may have taken a position in something like a Palantir, and you may have had those outside voices, kind of telling you that it might not be the best play, or maybe you should have waited, or, if it was them, they wouldn't have bought it, and we know that everyone has an opinion, of course. But if you can remain focused, remain disciplined, and if you truly saw that growth there, and you held on and you blocked out the noise this entire time, well, then hats off to you and congratulations. I have to give you some credit, because that is exactly how to stay disciplined in investments. That's what it comes down to. Just like all of those people who were holding Nvidia for a while, right? Years ago. And then when it started to sell off or correct, and everybody was saying, oh, I'm going to take the money and run. I'm going to take the money and run. And other people said, no, you know what? The storm will pass. Nvidia will keep growing. I'm just going to hang on, And now look at them now. So that's why, again, I got to give you guys credit. So anyone who jumped in Palantir, congratulations. Brag a little bit in the comments if you'd like. But shares of Palantir and Dell rallied, obviously. The announcement is part of several changes slated to take place on September 23rd, just in a couple of weeks. Also joining the S&P is insurance company Erie. Okay, let's pull up Erie real quick, see how they're looking after hours. This is a little bit more expensive stock. Yeah, so we can see the stock right now is up about 2.7%. And again, this stock is well over $500 a share. Even today was up 2%, up to about 506 and a third. After hours, we're up to 520, almost 14 more points, almost another 3%, which technically now at 520, there's a new 52-week high for Erie. So, of course, as we said, just like with something like Palantir, whether you think it's overvalued or not, it really doesn't matter, because this is such a big positive news announcement that the stocks are going to go up. The stocks are going to go up. But even looking at Erie, let's check the numbers here. 23.5 billion, 49 PE. Look at that beta, less than half. Again, the beta is the overall volatility of the stock in relation to the overall volatility of the markets. And you can see that technically it is half as volatile as the markets. EPS, even on that miss, look, just by 1 cent. And then before and after that, we have nice beats on the EPS side. Revenue has been slowly and steadily climbing. Look at that, getting above the high twos to the $3.25 billion mark as of 2023. They turned the profitability around now. 23 was their most profitable year going back the last 5 years. And even quarterly, we can see the net margin percentage stepping up and the revenue just consistently consistently climbing. Excuse me, too much coffee today. but we can see last quarter almost $1 billion in revenue. So yeah, these are the types of companies that get attention. And that's why I always tell you guys, in my opinion, follow the numbers, follow the revenue, right? Follow the profitability, follow the growth, because inevitably you will more than likely start to get this snowball effect of just consistent positives. And look, there's a 1-year chart on Erie right here. So stock is now, it was around 275 roughly 12 months ago. So this company is up almost 100% now over the last 12 months. Roughly, it'll most likely hit 550 in my opinion off of this news. And like I said, even if all three of these names we just looked at go on runs for the next couple of weeks, and then they start to sell off and pull back to where they were, let's just say, before the announcement, in my opinion, you probably shouldn't worry, because unless markets completely start to tank, then again, I have to reiterate the January effect and the influx of new volume and new cash that's more than likely going to come into all three of these names after the ball drops going into 2025. So Dell, Erie, and Palantir looking very nice after hours, all getting some pumps. But I also wanted to see, because of course, when companies get added, companies get subtracted. Right? So I wanted to look at also some of the other moves that were taking place. And we see they're showing love for Palantir, Dell, and Erie after 3 stocks were added. S&P announced Friday. Palantir would replace American Airlines. Dell would replace Etsy. And Erie would replace Bio-Rad Laboratories. Starting on September 23rd, American Airlines and Bio-Rad would be added to the S&P Mid-Cap 400, while Etsy would join the S&P Small-Cap 600. Stocks added to the S&P are getting the kind of bounce you'd expect. Yep, Dell is up. So the investors benchmarked to the S&P 500 will be forced to buy their shares as the stocks get added to the index. Bada bing, bada boom. Getting removed from the index, however, doesn't have an equal but opposite impact. American Airlines, slightly down. Etsy, Bio-Rad. June Barron's predicted that Dell and Palantir would be among the next stocks added to the S&P. Yeah, well, I mean, there were a lot of people saying that, but okay. Shout out to that guy over at Barron's. However, we did cite some terminology and specific wording in previous Barron's articles that we really didn't disagree with and came out of left field, if you recall correctly. So me personally, I don't know how much credit I'd give to that guy over at Barron's, but yeah, hats off, I guess. Congratulations. If you want to bet on companies that have been removed, there's an ETF for that. NIXT, set to begin trading on September 10th, and will include companies that get dropped from large cap indexes for 5 years. So that could be an interesting play as well, because I know some people will look at this news and they'll say, oh, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to buy some Palantir shares, I'm going to buy some Palantir calls, right? That's going to go up off the news. And like this article basically says, you can see the inverse effect as well. Now, I know you're not seeing it immediately, but chances are, one thing I've noticed is that companies that do get removed do go out and go off on little sell-off sprees. And even if it only lasts, 30 days, 60 days, and then it bottoms out and slowly gets back to where it was because the business is still intact, it just got moved off of one index. But in my opinion, you will more than likely see a dip down in the names that got removed. And yeah, shout out to this article, the NIXT, like it said, begin trading on September 10th. We'll track companies that get dropped from the index. So could make a note of that. NIXT, again, September 10th. So that could be something that you guys may want to look at moving forward. American Airlines, Etsy, smaller cap. Erie, okay. Changes ensure each index is more representative of its market capitalization range. June, we saw CrowdStrike, KKR, and GoDaddy join the S&P. Very nice. September 23rd. Zurn LK Water Solutions, Clear Secure to join S&P Small Cap 600. So there you go. Honestly, of course, I mean, there are so many companies that trade public. I don't sit here and act like I know about every company that's publicly traded. So technically this would be good news because, if they're not listed on any major exchange and now all of these names are joining the S&P Small Cap 600, then you're probably going to have some pops in these companies. Viper Energy seeing a little pop after hours. But yeah, we have, again, more names. AMC here is another name, of course, that a lot of people online I know we're keeping an eye on. And Dine Brands, new skin to leave the S&P Small Cap 600. So AMC to leave the S&P Small Cap 600, which technically is not a good sign. Mercer International, 3D Systems we looked at, I believe, to leave S&P Small Cap 600. Fabrinet moving to S&P Mid Cap 400 from S&P Small Cap 600. That is that technically is good news. Western Alliance, Viper Energy joins S&P Mid Cap 400. MP Materials, Wolfspeed, I know people were talking about Helen of Troy. Ziff David moving from S&P Mid Cap 400 to S&P Small Cap 600. And again, that's why I mentioned the fund managers, because the larger and more steady the index is, the more volume will go either in or out of these companies, right? So something like, in my opinion, these names here, like Wolfspeed, Helen of Troy, these companies moving from the mid-cap 400 to the small-cap 600 may potentially start to see lighter and lighter volume coming in and more selling now to move into the companies that were added to the mid-cap or the large-cap index. You understand? But we'll see. We'll see what happens. B. Riley Financial to leave S&P Small-Cap 600. A lot of news today. Tenya, I'm assuming, right? The GN, Tenya, to move from S&P Mid-Cap 400 to S&P Small-Cap 600. Etsy, yep, we looked at this. And that was the last article that came out today for Palantir. But a lot of action again after hours. And let's look at AMC actually real quick. AMC down 2.6%. We're not seeing, am I looking at a wrong symbol? There's not another AMC, is there? So how come this news is not here? Why isn't this news here? Fabrinet not seeing much action. Oh, wait, AMC Networks. What is the... That's a different... Yes, it is. AMCX. There we go. So this stock is down 2.2%. My apologies, I got the AMCs mixed up. And this is the TV, AMC Networks. And we were at a market cap of sub 400 million. We had a low PE here, 7.5. We can see we had some EPS misses the last couple of quarters. Revenue seems to be stagnating and potentially dropping now. We had a touch below 600 million for this quarter. But again, the company dropping back down to net margin negativity. Not the worst I've seen, but yeah, technically lowest revenue going back to 2019 for the year. So, it does seem like it was already on the down and down, but technically we are... See, these swings are getting tighter and tighter, though, after this big drop, so it may take a while, but we may potentially be setting up a wedge. And what is this? 884. And now let's just say, hypothetically, we come right down there to that low. Actually, no, in my opinion, looks more like a descending triangle. which means that potentially over the next week or so, we can potentially see the flash break. This is a 1-year chart, by the way. We can potentially see the flash break to this bottom fib maybe of 807, which of course would be new 52-week lows for AMCX, AMC Networks, not AMC Entertainment, which of course is probably, I think, still trending online, right? You guys are still watching AMC. But yeah, this is rough. But again, we're seeing a lot of these kind of older like cable TV network companies kind of struggling lately. And we can see again that we're shifting more into this digital world, but everyone's looking at, streaming apps and podcasts, and there's been a lot of even older people who were kind of set in their ways, right? They grew up with the TV. They always wanted the TV and cable. They want to sit on the couch, watch a movie, right? As opposed to the computer, a tablet, a phone. So even we're seeing older people are now shifting away from the cable and the hard lines, and they're moving now into kind of like this newer technology, the newer software that's available. Who's doing Roku, who has a Fire Stick or whatever, right? So people are simply replacing those old cable TV packages with all of these new streaming services. So a lot of these older TV and cable companies have really been struggling and dropping down. So, we probably could have saw this coming. I don't think we looked at AMC Networks here on this channel. We looked at AMC Entertainment. But AMC Networks here, AMCX, now delisted from the oh my goodness, what was it, the mid cap? I don't know, we said it before. AMC Networks to leave S&P small cap 600. So again, that would mean that technically there may potentially be even less volume now moving forward into something like AMCX. But, I basically wanted to do the updates on the good ones. Dell, Palantir, and of course, let's not leave out Erie, E-R-I-E, which also got moved to the S&P 500, and all three of those names are up after hours. Congratulations to all shareholders, and that's pretty much it. I'll end it there. So once again, this is Stocks by the Numbers. I want to thank you guys for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. I'm usually very quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel, and of course, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky, they're volatile, and they're very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your weekend.